We have here a really nice Gibson R9 that was brought to a tech who really didn't take good care of it. The guitar is in our hands initially for a refret and a custom-made nylon nut. When we flipped this guitar over to have a look inside the control cavity, we found a lot of things that ought to be there. What should be a nice setup with imitation bumblebee caps and 50s wiring instead shows off a lot of really poor, lazy, sloppy technique. First off, we've got all of this spare braided cable with the shield so close to the leg of this cap here that it wouldn't take too much for a guitar player to get into his playing and move his guitar around and have these wires short out and kill the sound right away. Now, this is something that was sold to a customer with the intention of being an accurate replication of a vintage 59 Gibson Les Paul wiring. I have never seen a vintage 59 Les Paul with wiring that looked like this. And see what we've got. Well, and as you can see, when we lift this out, the ground bus lead had only been stuffed underneath here, and it has never had any solder on it at all. The tech who put this in was really trying to get away with a lot of sloppy work. When you use low torque pots, it's not normally considered good practice to have so much solder that you're encroaching on the axle. Apparently that lesson was lost on this tech. When you have so much solder that it's running down the side of the pot, but you still haven't really well wetted the braided shield, your technique may need a little more work. This is unrefined. You can see on the bridge volume pot that there is an overabundance of solder here which has run down the leg. This can overheat the resistive element inside the pot and cause failure or intermittent operation. And when you look here, you can see for all the solder that's run down the leg, there's very little here holding the leg in place to make a ground connection. You can see we had just a tiny little bit here making that ground. More is not better when it comes to solder. As we noticed with the bridge volume pot, the neck tone pot has an overabundance of solder as well. It's made a good connection onto the body of the pot, but with an unnecessary surplus of solder here, which leads a lot of heat into the pot and again can cause failure of the resistive elements. On the other hand, the leg for the neck tone capacitor has been starved of solder to the point where I can actually get in here and fit my probe right through where there should be a nice fillet of solder. There are no fillets here, and we have enough room to have daylight show through the leg of the pot. So too much solder where it's not needed and not enough solder where it is needed. In addition to all of the substandard soldering we found on the components in this control cavity, we also find a lot of splatter. You know, excess solder that's fallen off the parts or splattered away while the parts are being put in place that just hasn't been cleaned up. Definitely has the potential of coming loose at the worst possible time and falling into the wrong place and cutting the sound off while you're in mid-solo.